If you're ready to experience more peace and joy in your life, if you want to feel more comfortable in your own skin, and if you're ready to discover and expand on your energetic gifts and personal power, you're in the right place. So here's your host, Kelle Sparta.
Welcome back to Spirit Guides. I'm your host, Kelle Sparta, transformational shaman, spiritual business coach. I'm here as always on Wednesdays with my best friend in Boquete, Katherine Loranger. And she is also an amazing spiritual business coach. And if you guys listen to the episode on the 11th of December, you'll know exactly what I mean, because she did that hardcore thing. It was amazeballs. If you haven't listened to it, you need to go back and listen. That's the one on planning your next year. Okay, so today we are going to talk about, but before we do that, please remember, like, subscribe, and share. That's how you say thank you to us if you've enjoyed any of your episodes, is that you share them out, put them out on your social media, share them with your friends, whatever you want to do. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And if you have questions, send them in to Kelly@kellesparta.com, and we will get your question on the air and we will answer it for you. Okay, so today we are going to talk about training. This is my monkey. This is my circus. These are my monkeys. This is your circus. These are your monkeys, right? So the upshot of this is we're continuing the series that we've been doing around hiring and how to deal with that. And so today is specifically around training. Now, we've covered some of the stuff around training up until now in our preparation and things like that, in terms of creating procedure manuals and procedures that are videos and things like that. But today we are going to talk about the actual process. So last time we did onboarding. How do you onboard somebody? And then how do you train them? So today is how are we training them? How are we supervising them? Are we doing that too? Or is that next one? That's the next one.
I mean, it kind of fits into the name, really. And supervision and training really do go hand in hand. So
yeah. So we'll do both.
We can probably talk about it.
Yeah, we'll do both. So where we left off was we were talking about onboarding. How do you get somebody onboarded and all the details about how you make sure that they understand their role in the company and all the things, right? So taking that to the next level, now we have training and supervision, right? So training in this case is, going a little bit beyond your initial stuff, right? So obviously you're going to have them watch your videos that you made for them in the preparation process, and you're going to have them watch whatever you gave them or talk to you about the company culture and things like that, which we talked about before. But now they're up and running. And they're running into problems because they're going to, right? And having onboarded a couple of people recently, I can tell you that they run into problems, right? So the thing you have to keep in mind, especially when you're dealing with people from other cultures, and specifically I'm going to talk about the Philippines, since we've been talking about onlinejobs.ph, which is where I've been hiring my people from. They don't do conflict terribly well, much like Panama. Panamanians don't do conflict terribly well. They're like, I don't like to say no. I don't like to have anything go wrong, right? And so you have to learn how to communicate in a non-American fashion, okay? And the American fashion is, hey, what happened here? What went wrong? And with people from other cultures, you have to be a little bit more careful, right? So, and I want to bring this up too. If you're hiring out of India, you also need to be aware that culturally, they will not bring a problem to you unless you ask. And so you have to ask. So these are just things to keep in mind. That's a cultural difference. And, so when you have a problem, you need to learn how to say it in a way that is not offensive. So you need to be able to say things like, hey, this didn't work. Let me figure out what the miscommunication was, and let's figure out how to avoid that in the future, right? Very simple, but when you're running a business and you're doing 30 things at once, and I've been doing this for the last couple of months, trying to take a moment when somebody screws something up, because I had this happen. My new hire misunderstood what I asked him to do, and he disconnected a calendar that was, it took me a whole month to get the calendar rectified. And then 2 weeks later, he uninstalled it. And I was like, I was ready to spit nails because I was like, "Took me a month to fix that calendar and 3 different calls." And so had to take a breath and be like, okay, why did this happen? What is it that you thought that I was asking you to do? This is what I meant for you to do. I need this to go back into place. And of course, when it went back in place, it was broken. So I had to write to the company and thankfully they fixed it. But all of this is stuff that you need to expect will happen. When you are training people, they are going to make mistakes and you need to know that up front. That's just the case. And you were new at a job at one point in your life too, and you screwed things up. And I'm reminded of the Dear Intern meme that went around a while ago. Do you remember that one, Katherine? So there was this great meme that went around. There was an intern at Comcast that sent out a rando email to everyone, every subscriber in Comcast, and got like reamed for it. And all over the internet, people were writing, "Dear intern, here's how I screwed up on my job." Yeah. Right. And so just all this outpouring of love and support for this person who screwed up. Right. So remember, if you have a moment where you can think of that you screwed up in your job, that you were trying hard and you still screwed up bad, then, try and remember that before you respond to the person. Because, it's very easy to get upset and be like, why can't you do this? Because you're hiring this person thinking that they're going to support you. But you have to know that you have to train them in the way that's best for them to support you. And if you don't do that, that's not their fault. Right. And so there's always going to be some jiggering and juggling of trying to figure out how we communicate effectively and what we need to say in order to get the response that we need and to be able to explain ourselves in a longer term language, which if you've had an assistant before and you're hiring a new one, you need to know the shorthand you used with the person you worked with for years is not going to work with the new hire. You've got to create a new set of shorthand for them. They don't know everything yet. Right? That's part of the process is them learning it all. And so all of this stuff goes into play. Do you want to add anything to that, Katherine?
Well, I think when I think about training, I think what's important to recognize is that it is an ongoing process. So it's not like, okay, you've been onboarded and now you should just like go and everything should be, you should know everything. It's a constant back and forth, and it's a cyclical kind of thing, right? So as you are, and that's kind of part of the title, right? Like we kind of where it came from is my husband and I joke about this. He's in a job and he's at a level now where, at one point in time, people could say like, oh, it's not my circus, not my monkeys. Like, I don't have to care about it. It's somebody else's problem, right? And we were joking about it that, wait a minute, this is his circus. These are his monkeys, right? So it's the same when you have a business, like, wait a minute, oh crap, like it's actually on me now. So the training is this ongoing cycle of assessment, training, and reassessment, right? So you're assessing a couple of things when you're training. You're assessing, have they developed a level of competency? Do they have the capacity to get the competency that you need? And then are they executing in a correct way? Because that also comes down to the supervision piece, right? And the retention piece and whether or not they're going to be a good fit in the long run. And so the other thing I want to say about training is that it's not just on your worker, it's also on you as the leader. So you are the leader of your business, period. If you have a business, you are the leader. And as the leader, and I've done a lot of leadership development training and curriculum development. And, I've been in this area a lot. And I think the main thing I would say to people is that you need to look at yourself first. If you look at a leadership model, it starts with leading yourself first. So if you are the leader and you have somebody who's working for you and they're maybe not performing at a standard that you would like, you need to look at, have I given them enough training? Do they have an opportunity to ask questions? Am I giving them the support that they need to a reasonable level, right? Because somebody could have, you might have made a bad hire and you want to assess that as well. But the first step is, what is my role as the leader in helping this person fulfill the obligations and the expectations of their position? And what am I prepared and able to do to support them in getting to the level that I require them to be at? And do I need to do some training in terms of how to manage people, in terms of how to give feedback, in terms of how to deal with conflict or how to assess performance? Is there training I need to give them? Is there something that I need to do? Or is there a course maybe, or something like that? And Kelly, when you started talking, you were talking about the onboarding and videos and things like that. I was thinking like, wait a minute, if somebody hasn't had the time to do that and they're actually going to be training a person, right? We're going to like do it together on the computer. I'm going to show you. That could be how you create those videos for the future.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other side, we talked about what happens when it goes wrong, but the other side is what happens when it goes right. And, most entrepreneurs I know come from households where things weren't always hunky-dory. And so there's trauma response there where, you didn't get any positive reinforcement, so you don't know how to give positive reinforcement. And so this is one of those things that you definitely want to start practicing, because people, if you appreciate people for what they do, they will be so much more loyal to you, and they will work so much harder for you than they ever would otherwise. And so you need to speak the positives as much as the corrections. And that is super important, especially at the beginning of a job, right? Yeah. Especially at the beginning. So if I were you, when you hire somebody on, you would say why you are interested, why you're excited about working with them, right? Not just, oh, here's why I'm interested. Don't play these power games, right? It's here's why I'm excited to be working with you. Here's why I chose you over the hundreds of other applicants that I had. Here is why I liked what you had to offer. And here is what I'm hoping we can do together, right? So being able to set up those expectations, set up the appreciation early, and then to be able to make sure that they feel confident that they're going to get paid on time, and make sure that their paychecks go out on time and all the stuff, right? So, that's another way you appreciate them, is by making sure they get paid, right? So,
one of the things, Kelly, that I'm thinking that would be, and this is kind of a practice that I have in certain areas of my life, but when you're working with somebody who maybe you're not in the same office, or maybe you have a weekly, and that's definitely at the beginning, you need to have like a daily or a weekly kind of scheduled time to touch base. Yeah. But what you could do is move towards and you should have reporting as well. Like that's part of the accountability and kind of time tracking, and just for you project managing what's happening in your business. But also it could be just a quick like one sheet for them to report on, what I accomplished this week or today, what I'm really proud about, right? What do I feel like I totally rocked? What did I, kick ass on? And then where are the things that I want to improve? Or where do I see that there's some growth? Or where were there challenges? And where do I need your help?
Yes. Yeah. And I do that report with my person every single day. They turn that in every day as part of their accountability, right? So do they have the what I'm proud of part, or or how I knocked it out of the park today? They don't have that, but I should add that in.
I'll invite you to consider trying it. Yeah.
I absolutely will. I used the one that was straight out of the online jobs, one VA a week class.
Right.
Yes, I will absolutely add that in.
Yeah. So, then what you're doing is you're teaching that person to focus on, like, yes, there's the full spectrum of what happened in the day, right? But if like 99% of the day went really, really well, and 1% they kind of screwed up on, or maybe not even screwed up on, but they weren't quite sure about, they're feeling challenged with, if that's all they're focusing on the report, that's going to feel disproportionately larger. Right. And so when you start to focus on, what I accomplished, what I'm really proud of, what I'm, feel really good about. Right. And then there was also this challenge. It just helps to put things into perspective.
Yeah. And I will say this, we've been talking about when to hire, right? And to hire before you really need somebody, because then you're sane when you're hiring them. And I will say that for the last couple of months, my business has been very, very busy. And I personally have been very, very busy. So I've been running a retreat. I've been doing a show. I was starring in a musical and doing all sorts of stuff around the edges. And my dog died and, all sorts of stuff happened, right? And so I have been on the not entirely sane level of managing or, being able to onboard people. And this is one of the reasons why I was like, I need to keep my previous assistant on so that she can help me with this, because I knew that this was coming and I knew I needed somebody too. And so, I could share that process with her so that, they can ask her a question primarily. And then she only asks me if I absolutely need to know. And then that has been super helpful. But I will say that had I done this before I started the show, this would have been much easier, right?
Hindsight.
Yeah, it would have been so much easier. And I just had resistance to doing it. I was like, it's going to suck and I don't want to do it. It really wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Of course it's going to suck. If you say it's going to suck, it's going to suck. And the universe is like, and here it is. Suckiness.
Yeah.
Suckiness. Yeah.
So, it was a whole thing. Anyway, the upshot though is that I do highly recommend that you start this process earlier than you need to, because it's not going to be earlier than you need to.
Yeah.
Okay, it'll be right on time by the time you get through it. And
one of the other things I just wanted to say about training is also ask your person, what training do you think you need? I.e., what courses, what professional development are you looking at? Right. So kind of you want to be assessing yourself, but you also want to get a sense of where's their mind at? What are they thinking of? Where do they see their growth opportunities as? And so it's not just you saying, oh, you need a course on this, but that they're kind of coming in and saying oh, I'm really good at this, but I'd like to learn more about this.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that's something I did as part of the interview process, actually. So let's talk a little bit about supervision, because these go hand in hand. You don't know what they need trained on unless they ask you, and unless you're actually watching, right? So my new hire said, I'm not good at editing videos. And I'm like, would have been good to know before I hired you, but okay. So now I got to figure out, if he wants to be trained in it, or if we need to, find somebody else who can do the difference or whatever. But but he's really good at other things, right? And so nobody's going to be everything to everyone.
Yes,
you just need to know that, right? Yeah. And so, if I have to do the occasional outsourcing of a video, edit or whatever, that's fine. But the point is that you need to be supervising, right? So one of the things I have learned from supervising him is that he's not good at knowing when he doesn't know what he doesn't know.
Yeah, because he's a human being.
Right.
Because that's how human beings are. We don't know what we don't know, right?
But he's not good at recognizing what he doesn't know. So is what I'm kind of saying. So I gave him an assignment, or there was, let me be clear. There was an assignment in the ClickUp that was there before that he went to try and do. And I was in the middle of the retreat and I did not see his reports. And clearly my assistant wasn't paying attention, because for 3 days he said he was working on this thing. When I went in to look at it, the assignment was a couple months old. I did not remember what it was, and it was not clearly stated. And I couldn't figure out what it was, and I was the one who assigned it. And he didn't ask. He didn't say, what is this? He said, I'm working on it. I'm like, how are you working on it? What is it that you think you're doing? He's like, well, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, but how are you figuring it out? What is it that you think this is? Because I got to tell you, I wrote it down and I don't know what it is. And so I would have expected that you would have come to me and asked me this question and not spent 3 days. I'm not sure what you were doing, because I wouldn't know how to start looking for the answer to this, because I don't even know what I'm asking, right? If I gave bad input, you need to look at me and say, this is bad input. Right?
And again, that's a very American way of looking at it.
Well, and I didn't say it that way, but I said it differently. I said, if what I have said to you is unclear, I need you to come back and ask me why, what is this? I don't understand.
Crazy
because
lady. Crazy
yeah,
lady. What are you
because I'm a
talking
crazy
about?
lady and I just
Yeah.
wrote random shit down, and I had expressed it to the person that was in the assistant
Mm.
position at the time over WhatsApp, and it got put in
Oh.
shorthand in ClickUp,
Ah.
and then she left. And
Right.
so it wasn't clearly laid out in
Ah.
want to dig back through everything to try and figure it out. And I was like, well, we'll figure out what the problem is again later at some point.
That's a good systems thing though, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, if you're using ClickUp and WhatsApp to communicate and you're
Yeah.
providing more detail in WhatsApp, well then part of the task for them is to then transcribe that detail into ClickUp so it's captured.
Okay, that's one way to do it. I have just taken to only putting things in ClickUp. So
Also that. Yeah,
because
but
I'm
if you're doing like multiple communication
yeah,
ways, then yeah.
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 So yeah, I just went and
So
started
interesting.
like doing great detail of the assignment in ClickUp. So yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ClickUp's
um,
awesome. Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all of these things, right? So,
And we're
when
going to
you're
be doing an episode on software and tech
yes,
stacks and,
yeah,
tools and
all sorts of
resources.
stuff. LastPass, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're supervising, you need to be paying attention to what they're working on. And this goes back to knowing how long it should take to do things. Because, if I build a funnel from scratch, for me, in my own system, it should take me a couple days if I built it myself, because I've been doing this for years. And, if I give you a funnel to do and it takes you a month, whereas it took me 2 days, now we have a problem, right? So either you don't know exactly what you're doing, or I'm in the way. So let's say I was in the way for part of that month, right? Let's just say that I was the delay because I didn't review the materials for 4 or 5 days, and then I maybe they didn't have access to something that they needed access to. You need to be clear with yourself where you are the pinch point in the process, right? So you need to be honest about how much of that time was them delaying and how much of that time was you not doing your part, right? And so, if it's taking that long, either you're in the way or they don't have access or something like that, or they're just saying I'm working on it and not working on it so that they can run their hours up. So one, or some combination thereof, which has been known to happen, especially when you're dealing with countries where, the living wages are low and they're trying to work extra hours, or if you're only hiring them part-time and they really need full-time work, they may be looking for another job and, doing all sorts of
another job.
working another job.
Yeah.
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 So you need to be aware of how long it should actually take to do things.
Yeah.
Now, the first
And-
time they do it for you will take probably 2 or 3 times as long as what it would have taken.
Yeah. And the other thing with that is that comes back to the hiring process, right? So being really clear on what am I going to be requiring that this person do? And then in the interview process, you can ask, like, have you worked on or have you done this? Describe the process to me. Can you send me some examples? Because, Online Jobs PH, they've all got a portfolio, right? With, permission to share things. And then how long would this take you?
Right.
So you've gotten really clear at the outset.
Yeah. So all of these things. So when you start to really pay attention to what they're doing, instead of running around like a chicken with your head cut off in your own world, and you clear enough off of your decks that you can actually pay attention to them now.
Yeah.
Now when you pay attention and they know you're paying attention, then that's where you'll get more, they won't slosh as much on their hours because they know you're paying attention, right? That's another thing that you've got to be aware of too.
And one of the things that I find with my clients, especially when they're making their first couple of hires, like maybe they're bringing on their first couple of team members, is that there's a mental shift that needs to happen from being a coworker, because I think we've all been a coworker at one time. And so when you're an entrepreneur and you hire on your first person, it can feel like a coworker dynamic because that's what you're familiar with.
Right.
There's a difference between being a coworker and being a supervisor or being the boss. And so it doesn't mean that you're not friendly, like none of that stuff, right? But they're not your coworker. You are their boss. And so sometimes it can be like incredibly helpful to get some support and some coaching around how you mentally make that shift into who is the woman, the man, the person who's the supervisor, who is
Right.
the CEO of the business, right? Because there's a different way of thinking, there's a different level of accountability, there's a different way of interacting. You are modeling, you are setting the tone. So not just with your, the kind of supervision, but with the language that you use, with your work ethic, with your tone, with your, how you dress, how you interact with clients, how you interact with your workers. So just being really clear that part of that supervision is actually stepping into the role of, and, one of the ways that can support you in doing that, of course, you can, like get a coach to help you with that, and or find models of possibility. So think about in your work life or volunteer life or, any kind of life where you have had an amazing supervisor, or you've known of an amazing supervisor, or you've seen an amazing supervisor, right? And then start to get really curious about how are they acting? How are they showing up? And then how do you then model your behavior after that person?
Yeah. And I'm going to say one more thing specifically to the women out there. You are a supervisor, not a mom. Okay. Because, a lot of times the only model that women have for leadership in their lives is mom. Right. And so I want to be really clear that when you try to mother your employees or your contractors, you are actually disempowering them because you are treating them like children.
Well, and then you're doing this, like there's a power imbalance.
Yes.
Needs to be there in terms of the structure, the accountability, right? Like at the end of the day, your business is your livelihood. And so if you're acting like a mother or a partner, like
or a friend,
or a friend,
Yeah, it can't be a friend.
You can be friendly for sure, right? You can be friendly 100%. And at the end of the day, the buck stops with you.
Yes. And this is the piece, right? So, when you are talking to people in a supervisory position, the thing you need to be really clear on is what is the container that you're holding, right? How you're creating the container through creating the rules. Okay. So, and this goes back to children too, right? So if you create a solid container for the kids, then kids can operate more effectively because they know where their boundaries are, right? Same thing's true for adults. They need to know where their boundaries are. What's okay, what's not okay, what works, what doesn't work, what's expected of them, and how they can live into those expectations in a way that gets them positive results, because they all want to get a good review and a raise. That's what they want. So they're going to work into that if you give them the structure for that. If you set those expectations appropriately, right? Now, when you try to be their friend or you try to be their mom, first off, as a mom, you're setting them in a position of child, which disempowers them. And secondly, you're putting yourself in a codependent position, because typically mothers and children are very codependent in the way that they are, the mothers are always trying to look out for the child and make sure that they're okay and whatever. These are adults. You need to treat them like adults and allow them to make their own mistakes and allow them to make their own choices and to live with the consequences of those choices if those choices are problematic, right? So all of these things are reasons why you do not want to treat them like, where you're momming them. And friends, same thing. You can be friendly, but you cannot be friends with an employee or a contractor. Because when you do that, the ability to hold them accountable and the what happens,
blurry. The boundaries blur. The boundaries blur. Yeah.
Oh, not only and people I see the bosses get walked all over by their people because they were trying to be nice
and trying to be liked.
Yes, that too.
Yeah.
And so, your job is to be the boss. It's not to be the friend, right?
And it doesn't mean you're not going to be likable, like, to be
Correct.
clear, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing it well, as you're living into it, you're authentic, you're able to be yourself, but you're able to hold the boundary and be really clear with the people, your coworkers, or your workers. Yeah.
And to be clear, also, your primary job in that company is to protect the interests of the company, because if the company goes under, everyone's unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That is just the nature of the beast. So your first and foremost responsibility is to the continuance of the company, to the health and wellness being of the company. And then from that, you work with all of the other pieces. And yes, each piece contributes to the health and wellness of the company. But if one piece is demanding more than the health and wellness of the company can manage, then you need to pull back. Right? That you need to be really clear what your prime objective is in this regard, because, your job is to keep it going. Right? So supervisory wise, if you've constantly got somebody saying, "Oh, can I have a cash advance?" or "Oh, can I, take forever days off and no, you don't have anybody to fill the role," or, all of this stuff, no matter what the sob story is that they have. And it may be a valid sob story. Let me be very clear. Maybe they have actual issues, but if your company cannot manage the absence of those funds or that person, then you can't be responsible for their problems.
Yeah.
Right. So, hopefully you can find a way to work it out, but ultimately you've got to do what's best for the business. It's not like you're a multi-billion-dollar company that can suck up a little bit, right? Yet. So, you've got to see where the wiggle room is in the company. If you have the wiggle room, great. Be kind. Absolutely. And pay attention to how much your kindness is
kind, but be
limited.
Yeah.
There are limits. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, these are the things. And, you don't want to start with the assumption that people are going to take advantage of you, because then you're going to just draw people to you who take advantage of you. But you do want to be aware that people will slide if they can, that some people will slide if they can. Not everybody. Some people are just like, I'm going to give you 120% whether you want it or not. But, some people will slide if they can, and you need to be aware of that. So these are it's reality. It's not about, you want to be careful not to set the expectation that there's a problem, but you want to not be, sitting around with rose-colored glasses on going, la, 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 everything's fine, right? There's balance in the middle of there, right? All right. So I think that's what I have for this week. Do you have anything else?
No, I feel complete.
Okay. Well, then we will call this good. Once again, remember to like, subscribe, and share. And remember, what you focus on is what expands. What you intend is what you create. So choose wisely. Have a great one.
So that's it for today's episode of Spirit Guides Podcast. Head on over to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. Every week, one lucky listener who subscribes and posts a review on iTunes will be entered into a drawing for a $10,000 value grand prize and a private reading with Kelly Sparta herself. Be sure to head on over to spiritguidespodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Kelly's gift and join us on the next episode.